Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Boulder Conquer the Course webinar. My name is Tegan Habercorn, and I'm on the marketing team at Ironman. Today, we will be hearing from life sport coach Jeff Sankoff. Jeff Sankoff is an emergency physician, a triathlete, a coach with life sport coaching, and the host of two popular triathlon podcasts, the TriDoc podcast and Tempo Talks. Jeff has been involved in triathlon for more than 20 years, progressing from a back of the pack age grouper to age group champion and multiple world champion qualifier. At both the 70.3 and full Ironman distances, he brings his experience as both a competitor and a physician to his coaching, where he works with athletes of all backgrounds to help them become the best version of themselves and achieve their goals while staying healthy and maintaining a sustainable balance between their training and real life obligations. We're excited to hear from Jeff today. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. All of your mics should be muted and cameras should be off. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat feature. Myself and life sport coach Juliet Hodgman will be answering those in the chat as we go, and we can answer a couple questions at the end as well. So with that, I will go ahead and hand it off to Jeff.
Thanks, Tegan. It's great to be here, everybody. I am really excited to talk about a race that is very near and dear to me. Near because I live in Denver myself, so just down the road, and dear to me because I've done it since it was the 54:30, I think it was called, way back when. And so I think over the course of the past 20 something years, I've done this race probably 15 times. So it is a race that, being my local 70.3 event, something that I come to do as often as I can. This year is one of the few years I will not get to do it. I'm going to be doing a different race this year, but I will be there in spirit. I'll actually be around the race event this year, just won't be participating as an athlete. Tegan gave you a little bit of an intro as to who I am. I'll just kind of re-encapsulate that a little bit if you don't mind. I've been in the sport of triathlon for more than 20 years. I have done it all, been a beginner, been a back of the pack athlete, middle of the pack athlete, eventually made my way towards the front of the pack. I have qualified for the half Ironman World Championship 8 different times. I was in Marbella last year. I will be in Nice this year. I'm very excited about that. I have been to Kona a couple of times as a qualifier for the Ironman World Championships. I am a medical contributor as an emergency physician. I contribute medical content to various different publications, including Triathlete Magazine, on a regular basis. And I have been coaching for over 6 years now as a member of Life Sport. And there I have the great opportunity to work with athletes who are beginners all the way through to world championship qualifiers, and have been doing so with athletes around North America and the world for the past several years, and something that brings me great joy. I also produce a couple of podcasts, one of them being the TriDoc podcast that deals with health and wellness topics and the intersection with triathlon, and Tempo Talks that I produce with professional triathlete Matt Sharp. We do that on a weekly basis to discuss news and goings on around the triathlon world. But today, I'm going to be talking to you about a race that I have enjoyed for many, many years, and that is the Boulder 70.3. It is a race that is in a spectacular location, beginning at the beautiful and very sunny Boulder Reservoir, right at the base of the Front Range Mountains. You get the spectacular Flatirons, and of course the Front Range just looking down at you. You see Long's Peak in the background. It's just a really beautiful setting for a race. It offers a challenging but beautiful and honestly very fast bike course, one of the faster bike courses on the 70.3 circuit, something that I think a lot of athletes don't really know when they go into this race. They think it's going to be slow given its elevation profile, which we'll talk about in a little while, but the reality is it's actually quite fast compared to other ones. It has a very well-supported run course. Not the easiest. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but still a beautiful run course, running around the reservoir a couple of different times. And you have the opportunity to race in really a historic mecca of triathlon, a place where the best have put themselves out there, the best have come up through the sport. You are going to be racing against some of the best age groupers in North America, and you will put yourself up on the start line with beginners all the way through to World Championship qualifiers and professionals who are really at the top of their game. So it really is a spectacular event. For those of you who might not be local, and I assume there are a few of you who are going to be watching this, I want to give you a brief lay of the land in terms of what we're talking about. The yellow arrow in the middle of the screen is very close to where I live in Denver, which is the Mile High City. Boulder is shown to the upper left, and that is where the race is going to be taking place. And this is a slightly higher elevation. And we're going to talk about elevation, which is something that I'm sure a lot of you are thinking about. And then Denver International Airport, located to the east on the plains, just outside of where the race takes place. If we look a little bit closer at the Boulder area, this is where the city of Boulder is actually located. And just to the northeast, up along the diagonal highway, you have the Boulder Reservoir, which is where the race is going to start at the reservoir. And then you will leave the reservoir along a road that's usually closed, but it's accessed through this fire training center. It takes you onto the 119. I'm going to show you the map of the bike ride a little bit later, but the bike ride you could see follows this route around the reservoir through the foothills and then comes back down and will enter eventually after a second lap back in here. The run actually just runs all the way around the reservoir 2 times. And this arrow here is to indicate a very important part of your day, and that is the parking lot. Because in the past, the Boulder race has been plagued by traffic issues because the only road into the reservoir is this one here, 51st Street, which you will all take when you are going to do your pre-race activities, going to register, get your packet pickup. You're going to go in there to bring your bike and your run gear for dropping off your things the day before the race. But when it comes to race morning, it has been found over years past that this road gets very, very congested. It becomes very, very difficult to get all the athletes in because it's a very big race. It gets very difficult to get all the athletes in on time. And so over the past several years, the race directors have decided that it's more efficient to have everybody park in these very large open lots of what used to be, I believe, the Ryco factory and now is an empty factory building. And so these parking lots are huge. They accommodate all of the racers, the volunteers, all of the everybody who could possibly need to be at this race, spectators and everybody. And there is a shuttle service that will take you from this parking lot to transition on race morning. Now, a couple of notes about this. A couple of changes have been made to the way, if you've done this race before, you'll know what I'm talking about. But I don't want to dwell too much on what's gone on in the past. Instead, I want to just focus on what's going to be going on this year. When you arrive on race morning, you will find a parking spot. You'll be guided to parking by the volunteers who are in the parking lots. You will then take the things that you need, which is going to be a small amount of things. Please don't bring bike pumps. You really don't need bike pumps. There will be lots of bike pumps and transitions. You'll take your bag. You will walk over to where the shuttle buses are. It'll be very clearly marked. And then you'll wait in line to get on a shuttle bus, and the bus will whisk you over to transition. Last year, we had some problems where athletes were bringing their family members and spectators onto the buses, and that caused some issues in terms of getting all the athletes to the race on time. This year, I am told by our very friendly and lovely race director that we are going to take more time to be sure, and we're going to have more staff there to make sure that the buses at first are only going to take athletes. We are only going to want athletes on those first buses to make sure that we get all the athletes down there. There will be plenty of time for spectators to get to the race. We just want to make sure that athletes can get to transition, get their stuff all set up, and you won't have any problems getting the race started on time. The spectators will then follow. They will have lots of time to get to see you, to have your swim, get to transition, and then off on the bike. After the race, though, a change for this year is that spectators will be, your family members will be able to take a shuttle back to your car, get in their car, and have a pass that will allow them to then drive over to the reservoir and pick you and your bike up. And that's a big change for this year. In the past, it was a little bit harder to get you and your bike onto a shuttle bus and get over to the parking lot and then get into your car. And it caused a lot of delays for people getting home. That is not going to be the case this year. This year, one of your friends or family members will be able to go get your car or their car, and they'll be able to drive back to the reservoir, pick you and your bike up, and go. So, shuttle buses, there'll be a lot more information about that in the race packet, the race guide, which will be coming out much closer to the race. And of course, at the race briefings, you'll learn much more about that as well. I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about altitude because I know this is something that causes a lot of consternation for people, especially if they're coming from lower altitudes. So I do want to address this before I really get into the race itself. Boulder is at an elevation of 5,430 feet above sea level. That is more than a mile above sea level. And as you go up, oxygen levels go down. So this is why you often hear about sporting events and athletes who are already supremely trained having issues when they come to higher altitude. So you can imagine that for an age grouper who is training at sea level, coming to this kind of elevation can potentially cause some issues with fitness and with shortness of breath and things like that. And there's no question, when I first moved to Colorado, I noticed it. I was training and I was fairly fit, and yet going up a flight of stairs, I would feel it. So when you first come here from a lower altitude, you will notice it when you exert yourself. But I do want to note that it's not nearly as bad as people make it out to be, and it's not nearly as bad as you likely fear it's going to be. So I do not want people to spend too much time worrying about this. Furthermore, Boulder no longer has the distinction of being the highest elevated Ironman branded race. That belongs to a race in New Mexico that takes place in July, which I'm not going to be talking about, but that is going to be, I am sure, a very successful and very exciting event. But that is now the highest event. It's over 6,000 feet. So if you're interested in altitude, that's one that you can go to as well. Now, altitude is a double-edged sword, and this is why I want to say that while it's often overfeared, I think the benefits of altitude are also very much underestimated. So, what are the cons? Well, I'm sure you all know that when you come to higher altitude, you have to be ready for the fact that your heart rate is going to be higher. And that's simply because you have lower amounts of oxygen in the atmosphere. That means that your heart has to work a little bit harder to push enough oxygen to all of your hardworking muscles to get you through the activities you're doing. Okay. Your power ceiling, your functional threshold power, for those of you that are using power meters on the bike, well, that's going to be affected because your muscles are simply not able to perform as well with lower ambient oxygen levels, and therefore FTP is affected. Now, if you are one listening to this who lives in Boulder, and when you go down to a lower altitude race, well, you actually get a bump in your FTP just by virtue of the fact that you have higher oxygen. So there is that to be considered if you are a person who lives at altitude. But if you're coming to altitude, no question, your FTP is going to be affected to some degree. Another impact that a lot of people don't think about because it doesn't really affect performance is the effects of the sun. The higher up you are, the closer you are to the sun's rays, the less ozone protection you have in terms of filtering out the harmful UV rays. And so the effects of the sun can be very, very significant at altitude. And so you have to take that into consideration, especially on a run course like Boulder, where there's not a lot of shade. And then there is much lower humidity at altitude. So the higher you go up, the lower is the humidity, and that causes a very drying effect. When I first moved to Colorado, I would go for a run, and I was from Montreal, which is a much lower altitude, much higher humidity, and I would gauge how dehydrated I was based on how much sweat was in my clothing. And when I moved to Colorado, my clothing would dry instantly as I was exercising, and I did not appreciate the fact that I was sweating just as much. So you have to just anticipate that you're going to be losing a lot of fluid much more quickly and anticipate that and be ready with your hydration plan. Now, the pros of altitude, and this is a big one, is that because the air is much less dense, you have much lower wind resistance. And remember I said that the bike course here is very fast? Well, the reason the bike course is so fast has to do with that. The lower wind resistance here offsets the detriment on your FTP quite dramatically. Because remember, speed is determined by the amount of power you put to the pedals and the amount of resistance slowing you down. Rolling resistance unaffected. You have the exact same type of roads, the exact same type of tires, but wind resistance dramatically decreased at altitude. So that's a huge pro that I think people don't anticipate when they come here. So how are you going to prepare for altitude? Well, there's only so much you can do. If you can get here early, fine. I mean, honestly, even if you get here a week early, you're not going to adapt physiologically, but at least you will get a sense of what it feels like, and you'll probably have a sense of how to change the way you approach this race. So if you can get here early, great. If you can't, don't stress about it. It's not that big of a deal. Like I said, altitude acclimation takes a very long time, and getting here a couple of days early versus a week early is not going to change anything. You do want to change your efforts, though, in terms of how you race. And I will tell you from my own experience that the swim is really where I felt the altitude much more than on the bike and on the run. And I can't really explain why that is, but I just noticed that I was much more out of breath quicker on the swim. And so my advice for anybody coming here from a lower altitude is to go out on the swim much more easily. Go out with a lower effort level, see how you feel, and then ramp up your effort as you kind of learn how it feels. And if you have an opportunity to get in the water and swim before race day, by all means, you should do so so that you get a sense of what it feels like swimming at altitude. Adjust your power plan on the bike by about anywhere from 15 to 20%. And what I mean by that is lower your FTP by 15 to 20% and then adjust your anticipated race power. Now, that may be overshooting it. So you'll have to kind of see how it goes when you're actually racing. Watch your heart rate, but just remember that heart rate zones also are going to be off a little bit. But your max heart rate is going to be unchanged. So if you watch your heart rate based on the power you're riding and see that it's lower than you anticipate, then you can bump up your power a little bit. So you have to be ready to adapt. Talk to your coach if you have one. And if you don't have one, ask questions around the athletes who might have been here before, or certainly myself or Juliet would be happy to help you. And then the other two big ones: increase hydration much more than you anticipate. You want to really take advantage of all the aid stations to get water. You want to increase. You don't necessarily want to take more calories, but you definitely want to take a lot more water to be ahead of the fact that you're going to be losing more water. And then sun protection. Sun protection cannot be overemphasized. I cannot tell you how many people get sunburned on this race because they don't realize that the sun is so much stronger here. So just be ready for it. Okay, let's get to the race itself. That's what we're all here for. The course for the Boulder swim is fairly straightforward. You start at the east swim ramp. You swim straight out, you make a left-hand turn, you make another left-hand turn, you swim straight back to the western boat ramp. The nice thing about this swim is that in the past, Boulder has redone this swim many, many times, and many times they've had you swimming directly into the very low-lying sun. The beauty of this course is that no time are you swimming into the sun. So it is really easy to sight along this course. You will never have trouble. The buoys are always on your left. You will never have a problem finding where you're going. Just follow the feet ahead of you, and you're going to have no trouble at all. As you likely know, being a previous participant of a 70.3, or if this is your first time, let me tell you what the swim start is all about in a 70.3 race. You and 2,500 or so of your new friends are going to get in line about 10 or 15 minutes before the race begins. And there are going to be people standing along the way in the swim corral with these signs that are going to be very helpfully notated as to an anticipated swim finish time. You need to seed yourself amongst your new friends in what you believe will be your anticipated finish time. So if you are a 40-minute, 1,900-meter swim person, put yourself around about 40 minutes. You will see a sign that says 40 to 44 minutes. Put yourself in that group of people, ask the people around you, how long do you think your swim will be? And sort of just find out where 40 minutes is. It's never a problem to put yourself maybe a minute, maybe 2 minutes ahead of where you think you should be. Do not put yourself 5 or 10 minutes ahead. That is not going to help you. It is certainly not going to help anyone else. The dangers of putting yourself too far ahead are that you will be amongst people who are much faster than you, And that is going to result in them swimming over you, which is never a comfortable proposition. The dangers of putting yourself too far back are that you are going to be around people who are much slower than you, and you are going to end up having to swim around or over them, something that neither you or they are going to appreciate. So it really behooves everybody to put themselves exactly where they need to be. And the number one reason people tend to put themselves too far forward is because they're very fearful they're not going to be able to make the cutoff. So the cutoff for everybody who does this swim, everybody, is 1 hour and 10 minutes, no matter where you start. If you are this person right here, this person has 1 hour, 10 minutes. If you are the woman who's way back here in this pink cap, she has 1 hour and 10 minutes. It does not matter where you start. The second you cross the timing mat at the beginning, your personal 1 hour and 10 minutes begins. So don't feel like you're cheating anybody by putting yourself closer to the front. Put yourself where you actually are going to swim, and you will be much better suited to have an enjoyable time in the water and a time that works out well for you, because you'll be around people swimming the same kind of pace as you. You'll gain a draft off of them, and the swim will likely go faster than you anticipate. Some other tips about the swim: by the time you get to this point, it will have been quite a while since you ate. And most people get up 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. They have their breakfast. They're probably feeling a little nervous, so they don't eat a full breakfast. And by the time they get to the race, it's been 2 hours, maybe 3 hours by the time they've actually eaten something. And at that point, you're getting ready to put in, a good 30 to 45, maybe an hour, 10 minutes of exertion. And so you need calories. You don't want to start exhausting your glycogen already. And so I always tell people, bring a gel, bring a pack of chews, something that's got about 100 to 200 calories. Consume that about 20 minutes before you're getting ready to actually enter the water, and that will sustain you to get you through probably half the swim or so and get you towards where you need to be without having to get into any kind of calorie debt. The other thing about the swim, look, a lot of people feel nervous about the open water swim. So all of the opportunities you have to get in the water before a race, you should take advantage of. Go and swim with your friends. If you want to get in, if you only have access to a pool, that's okay. Put a bunch of you in the same lane, swim back and forth in the same lane so that you experience what it's like to swim with contact. All of that is good experience to learn how to swim in an open water environment. That the nice thing about these self-seated swims is you could see Ironman sends 4 people off at a time every 5 seconds or so. And so it dramatically reduces the congestion in the water and dramatically reduces the amount of contact that you have. So if you are an anxious person about the swim, put yourself on the outside lane here. And once you get in the water, because remember the buoys are on the left, so put yourself on this outside lane, which if you are lined up, it's going to be on the right. And then once you hit the water, just get yourself sort of angled out a little bit to the right and watch for those buoys. Now, as I said, if you're coming here from a lower altitude, do not go out in your 100-meter sprint time. You want to make sure that you calm your energy. And listen, the Ironman folks, they're all about getting everybody excited. They're all about getting everybody ramped up for this race. So there's going to be like pumping music. You're going to have all the crowd cheering for you, but it's up to you to really settle yourself. Make sure that you keep yourself under control so that when you hit the water, all of your enthusiasm is tempered so that you don't go out and don't take it out too hard. You want to make sure for that first 100, 200 meters, you are finding your rhythm, making sure you don't get ahead of yourself. There will be safety vessels along the way in the form of kayaks and boats. If you find yourself short of breath or tired, never, ever fear going to one of those to rest. Okay. As long as they don't propel you forward, you are fine to take a rest holding onto a kayak or a paddleboard. And once you feel ready to continue, you just say, I'm good. You let go. You start swimming again. Okay. Ironman wants you to finish, and we want you to finish safely. So you do what you need to do to be safe and have the day that you have trained so hard for. And remember, we're here to have a great time. So smiles all around. Enjoy the time that you're waiting to start your swim. You're going to be surrounded by people who have trained just like you have, and chat with them, learn their story. Take advantage of these moments to really celebrate all the work that you've done and get ready to enjoy a spectacular day. I will say Colorado has like 330 something days of sun a year. So the likelihood of you facing this kind of sky on the morning of the race is pretty good. And when you have done the work, you will have the opportunity to come out on that western boat ramp looking like this, super happy to be ready to get on your bike. There are wetsuits peelers at the top of the carpet just before you get into transition, and I will get to that in a moment. First, I will just stop to ask Juliet and Tegan if there are any questions I should stop to answer right now.
You can keep going.
I will keep going then. All right, let's talk a little bit about transition. This is a big race, so transition is quite large. Fortunately, it is very, very well designed and very, very well laid out. So it is quite easy to navigate. You will have an opportunity when you drop off your bike and run gear. Well, your bike will come in the day before the race. Your run gear will be brought the morning of. And when you do that, it is always important to suss things out. When you're in transition, you have to remember that the transition time counts towards your race time. And a lot of people are racing just to complete. Some people are racing to compete. Some people are racing to complete. Whatever you're there for, your transition time still counts. And the reality is that if you're worried about cutoffs, don't have a problem with cutoff times because you wasted time in transition. Transition can be free time to get back if you're just quick about it. And for those people who are actually racing, don't be the one who's getting in their way. Make sure that when you're in transition, you approach it as if it's a race because it is. So be quick. Remember that every second counts. You don't have to you don't have to be like sprinting, but you definitely don't need to be like lollygagging there. You don't have to be doing all kinds of extra things. Reconnoiter the transition area in advance. Make sure you spend some time when you drop off your bike, sort of understanding where you're coming in from the swim, where you're leaving on the bike, where you're coming back from the bike, where your bike is located, what rack, how am I going to identify it, things like that. Okay. You should always be practicing transitions in advance as part of your training. My colleague Juliet, who's on here, is quite hilarious about her transition practice, but the reality is I have yet to see anybody beat her transition times because she is so fastidious about training her transitions. So I highly recommend that you adopt the Juliet Hockman method of training your transitions as much as possible because it really, really does pay dividends. And part of training your transitions is learning all the things that you can get rid of. You don't need to chair. You don't need to be putting having a meal. You don't need to be doing all kinds of crazy things in transitions. You should be doing the absolute bare minimum. So figure out the things that you can get rid of by training your transitions and then do the absolute bare minimum to get through as quickly as possible. Here is a map of the transition area. I will tell you that you're coming out of the swim on the boat ramp up here. The wetsuit peelers are before you enter transition on the hillside right around here. And then once you come in, you can see that the arrows are quite simple. It's swim to bike going this way direction and then out the other end. And when you finish the bike course, you're going to actually come down and go the other way. So it's very important that you identify where your rack is and that you know where your rack is from both directions. You are going to want to make sure you identify your rack based on some kind of fixed landmark. The racks are identified by letters, and so it's actually quite easy. If you just remember your letter, then you'll just remember as you're running along, oh, I'm letter N, like Nancy. So you just, oh, okay, from this side, I just have to remember to pass O, and then I'm next. And from this side, I just have to remember to pass M, and I'm next. But remember which side you are, because that's the other mistake people often make, is they go down the row and realize, oops, I'm on the other side. So spend some time reconnoitering the day before. Make sure you understand where you are when you come in, one way or the other, and then know the fastest way in and out. All right. I will warn you, this is a hill. So when you exit, you are with your bike, you're running up a hill, and then you're going to mount over here. And when you first mount the bike, you're actually turning to the right because the initial bike course goes this way, down a hill. So it's very easy to get your shoes sorted out as you go down this hill. And then when you come back from the bike course, you're going to dismount up here and you're going to have to run down a hill. Now, the reason I mention this is because if you're a person who, like me, leaves their shoes in the pedals in order to have a very fast transition, going up and down this hill can be a little bit of a challenge. So you just need to know that that hill is there. And again, that's something you can suss out when you reconnoiter it. Once you are out of transition, you're in for a treat. A very fast, very beautiful bike course that does encompass a fair amount of time riding on Route 36. Highway 36 is notorious for a lot of traffic, but on this day, you get a whole lane all to yourself. Now, that is a good thing. That means that you don't have to worry about being pestered by vehicles. It means that you can feel very safe while you're riding. What it does not mean that you should be riding towards the cones. It does not mean that you should pass somebody who's riding towards the cones. Do not deviate outside those cones because there will be fast moving traffic on this other side and they may be coming from behind. So please, I don't care what's going on ahead of you. Do not go outside these cones. If you are riding and people wish to pass you, please stay to the right. You could see that riders are riding in the shoulder. That's because there is a very wide shoulder. For most of this ride, there is some degree of rumble strip, but it's very easy to navigate. It's not particularly deep rumble strip. It's super easy to cross. So ride on the shoulder. If you are going to ride on the road to pass people, keep to the right as much as possible. Leave as much of the lane as possible for people to pass you. It is a beautiful course. It is a lot of fun. Here is the map. It is a 2-lap course. I want to emphasize that because it's very important. You're going to come out of the reservoir. You are going to turn to your right. You're going to ride up to J Road. You're going to make this big circuit. And then here's the most important part is when you come back, you do not enter transition. You must pass go, collect your $200, and continue around the circuit again. Now, people know that this is the elevation profile, and it can look a little bit daunting. Now, it's not a huge amount of elevation gain, so I think there is a certain amount of deceptiveness to this elevation profile. And so I just want to point out that the worst of it is really here. It's this part. This part is really where you're gaining most of your elevation, and it shows up here, and then it shows up again here. And I want to point out that like the entirety of this climb is from when you leave transition to the point on 36 that you're going to come to the intersection of 36 and Broadway. Now, if you're not from here, you're not going to know what I'm talking about. So you're going to turn right out of transition and you're immediately going to start to climb. And the gradient here is probably 3%. It's not anything more than that. None of this is particularly steep. You're going to go up diagonal. You're going to turn right on J, and it continues at about 2 to 3%. You're going to turn right on 36, and now it kicks up a little bit. I think the maximum here is 5%, but it's not anything more than that. And what you're going to see ahead of you is a traffic light. That traffic light is at the intersection of Broadway and 36. Once you hit that traffic light, you know that you are done with this climb. And I want to counsel everybody who has never done this course before that how you do on this day comes down to how you measure your effort on this section of the course. Because if you go too hard on the first lap, you're going to pay for it on the second lap. You're really going to pay for it when you have to do this again. So really measure your effort on the first lap. Make sure you don't go out too hard because listen, you come out of the swim, you feel great to be on your bike, and it just feels like, oh, I'm just going to kill this part of the course. Don't do that. Okay. Stay within yourself. Whatever you and your coach have decided as a race plan, stick to it. Don't go too hard. And then once you get to Broadway, you have a sort of a U-shaped valley where you're going to have a very fast descent, followed by a climb that's not very long. And then you have these rollers, which continue to gain you altitude. And then you're going to make a right-hand turn on Hygiene Road and zoom, zoom, zoom. You lose all the altitude you gained Basically, that's the right-hand turn right there. And you're just going to scream down. And this is a pretty much a straight shot. This little kind of jog that happens here, you don't have to come out of arrow. You just basically scream down this whole descent. This whole thing is going to take you maybe 10 minutes. It's like very, very fast. So you're going to come down this. Now, again, if you are a person who is not comfortable going fast, that's okay. Come out of your arrow, be safe, do what you need to do, but stay to the right, please. Because there are people who feel very comfortable riding very fast and they will come by you on the left. So just be ready for that. You're going to make another left-hand turn, and then 75th is all about rollers. It's really nothing dramatic. You could see there's just some little bits and bobs, but it is then a continuous sort of very slow kind of climb, drag back up to where the transition is before you then start this all over again. Okay. And the second time you go through, it's going to feel a little bit tougher than it is the first time, but it's not terrible. And once you get to that Broadway intersection again, you're done because the rest of the course is that, fairly easy roller type stuff and then super fast zoom, and then a little bit of rollers to get you back home. So really, really nice, really fast bike course. And I can tell you that the times that people put up on this bike course are much faster than the elevation profile looks, in part because the roads are good and in part because the wind resistance is low. Any questions before I get to T2, guys?
I think you're good to keep going.
Must be covering things so thoroughly. All right. I don't have anything too exciting to say about T2. I'm just going to echo what I said about T1. It's a big transition, but it's easy to navigate. Be quick because your transition times count towards your total. So don't loiter. Don't have a chat. Don't be, talking to people. Wow, that was an amazing bike course. I really enjoyed it. I mean, how did you like it? No, you don't have time for that. That happens after the race. Make sure you understand where your bike is. Make sure you understand where you're leaving to go start to run. Practice your transitions in advance and do the bare minimum. I'll just show the map one more time just to remind you your dismount line is here. As you come back in to transition along that fire road, if you're the kind of person who, like me, takes their feet out of the shoes and wants to leave their shoes on the pedals, you will have time. There is a no pass zone that takes you through a gate. As soon as you get through that gate, that's the time to take your shoes off. You start going up a little bit of a hill and you're able to take your shoes off there and you'll have lots of time. But wait until you get through that gate and go through that little no pass zone and you'll understand when you see it. I promise you, it's very obvious. You'll get off your bike, you'll run down this hill into transition and out. And then you're on the run course. All right. The run course, look, I'm not going to lie. It's kind of diabolical. This run course is not the easiest run course. And honestly, I mean, it shouldn't be. It's a 70.3. You don't want to finish this race and feel like, wow, that was a super easy bike and a super easy run. No, you get a really fast bike and you kind of have to pay the piper and you're going to get a run that's going to be a little bit challenging. All right, a lot challenging. There's a couple of things that make this run course somewhat difficult. The first is the surface. So you're running mostly on hard-packed dirt roads and hard-packed gravel, but the surface tends to be a little bit loose. And so as a result, you're not getting a full push off every time. So every time you sort of push off, there's a little bit of slippage just because the surface tends to be a little bit loose. So all along the dam, all along this part of the race until you exit onto the road is dirt path. Okay, so you're going to have some loose kind of gravelly sort of surface. Okay, then you exit onto a paved road, and this part is basically the only paved surface you're going to run on. You're going to turn left onto Monarch, and this is about a mile. This is for those of you who follow professional triathlon, this mile is a very, very famous mile that a lot of the professionals that live in the area use as a gauge for their run fitness. They basically hit this mile and they use it as mile repeats. It is a gradual 1 to 2% increase of elevation the whole way. And then when you get to the end of it, you turn left and you're and this whole thing is dirt road. And then it's dirt road all the way along. I like to think about this run course. I segmented into loops in my, I segmented into thirds in my mind. So the first third of the run course is across the dam to about the corner when you turn onto Monarch. The second is along Monarch, and then you make the turn. This is a fairly flat, and then you start going down hills. And there's one hill here, and I consider that the second third. Then you kind of have a rolly part, and then there's a second downhill, and then you're back to the reservoir through the reservoir here, past the finish, running past the finish on a run course. Race directors, you have to like put up a screen or something so that we don't see the finish because it's painful, right? Who wants to run past the finish only to have to do it all again? But the nice thing is that this is just 10K, right? It's just a 10K course, and then you're going to repeat it again. But that's the way I think about it. So you could think about it that way as well if you like. Just remember the first third will get you to when you turn on Monarch. Second third is after that first big downhill, and then the third gets you to the transition area where you start the course over again. There is tons of support on this course, just tons. You will see so many people out there all along Monarch, riding their bikes along the dirt path, tons of people through transition, all along this area. It's just amazing. The other thing that makes this course kind of difficult, and I'm just not going to lie. I mean, it's beautiful, but it is entirely exposed. And this comes back again to what I said about the need for sunscreen. You want to make sure that you really have a lot of sunscreen on because you are going to be getting just exposed the entire time. And there is, I don't think, a single area where you're really in any kind of shade for any amount of time. And Boulder at this time of year can be warm. It doesn't feel too warm, thankfully, because we don't have high humidity, but it is warm. And the later in the day it gets, the warmer it's going to feel. So make sure that you're hydrating, pouring water over yourself at all the aid stations, keeping yourself protected with sunscreen, and just adjust your pace if necessary for the heat. So it's just going to depend on what kind of day you get. The heat also comes off of the dirt pack. So it's just, look, it is what it is. Everybody's dealing with the same thing. Like I said, I've done this course like 15 different times, and it's a tough run course. But you know what? It wouldn't be an accomplishment if it was super easy, right? And the reality is that when you finish that run course, you feel like this. And I promise you, you're going to finish and you're going to feel like this. And I want to be sure that after you've done all of this, you don't spend the last like half a mile, which tends to be downhill and then to the finish like this. Don't spend that time sprinting and blank mind. Enjoy it. You've worked really hard to be here. You've spent a lot of time. You've spent time away from family, maybe time away from other things that you'd like to do. So make sure as you're heading into the finish shoot, you really take that time to savor what you've accomplished and really savor that moment because you've earned it and you should enjoy it. So that's everything I've got to say about this amazing race that I just so love. And I hope that this has been helpful. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I would be happy to take any. Let's see, what am I doing? Yes, I think I stopped sharing. Did I stop sharing? I did. Okay.
Yes. And then we've got a couple of questions for you. If I live at sea level, is there anything I can do in my training to prepare for the altitude at Boulder?
Not really, I'm afraid. Altitude is something that you just can't replicate without being at altitude. But what I would say is please don't spend a huge amount of time worrying about it. There's, it's, you just don't need, I think people spend too much time worrying about it, and that's why more people don't travel to that race. And I think they are missing out because this is a wonderful place to have a race, a wonderful place to experience this kind of race. And the altitude, like I said, I think you'll notice it more on the swim. And so be prepared for that. But once you get on the bike, you're not really going to notice it at all, except that your bike time is going to be faster. And on the run, your heart rate might be a bit high, but honestly, you're not going to feel it. Like you don't tend to feel that it's too difficult.
Thank you. And then would you advise putting sunscreen on in transition? And then will there be sunscreen at aid stations like there are at other races?
I don't remember if there's
I
sun.
believe
I
the answer to
yeah.
that one is yes. I think we should
Okay.
have sunscreen in transition and at some of those aid stations.
Yeah, I knew there was a transition. I couldn't remember about the aid stations because I tend not to grab it at aid stations. But I will say this, get yourself some waterproof sunscreen, and really put it on thick before you start the day. The problem with putting on sunscreen sort of later in the day is once you're sweating, it's kind of hard to get it on and to get it to stick where you want it to. I try to put on, I use a mineral sunscreen, and so I know that mineral sunscreen sort of stays and it's effective even over time. Whereas the chemical sunscreens, so the difference being the mineral sunscreen, of course, is the zinc-based ones. The chemical sunscreens lose their effectiveness over time. The mineral will, as long as the mineral's sitting there, it's working. So I like the mineral sunscreens for these kinds of events. You can put them on pretty thick; they'll stay most of the day, and you don't have to worry as much about reapplying. So that's my advice.
Thank you. If I have a choice between a road bike and a TT bike for this course, which should I choose?
100% a TT bike, assuming that you are comfortable on it. The only issue with the TT bike on this course is you just have to be comfortable handling it at very high speeds because there are some descents where if you stay in aero and just let it go, like I have hit 50 miles an hour on this course. Now, I am very comfortable at high speeds. I pedal hard. I stay very aero. You do not have to hit 50 miles an hour. I know lots of people who ride TT bikes who will sit up in the aero bars and they won't get above like 30 miles an hour. So you can control your speed. But if you are comfortable on your TT bike, cornering, descending, then this is a TT bike course 100%.
Thank you. And then you said the run course was not shaded. How hot does it get? And how much of it is paved versus dirt?
Paved is probably, I think it was only 1 mile is paved. So that tells you it's one out of 13 miles, or one out of maybe, yeah, I think it's
Might
only
be
one
two
out of
out of,
13
yeah,
miles. It
one
might
or
be
two.
two, yeah. So very little of it is paved. And then how hot does it get? It depends on the year. I mean, I've run on this course when it's been literally 110, I think, one year. It was awful, but that's not normal. Most years it will tend to be high 80s, low 90s because that's Boulder in June.
The aid stations also do a really good job having water and ice for athletes, and there's an aid station each mile. Just so you guys don't worry too much about the heat, we do have some
Yeah, and I
stuff
want
out
to
there for
say,
you.
like I've raced many races, like I have done over 100 half Ironmans. And the reason I've done this one 15 times is not just because it's up the road for me, but because racing in 85 degrees or even 89 degrees in like as low humidity we have here is infinitely better than going to Chattanooga and racing in 82 degrees when it's like 1,000% humidity. So I will race here any day of the week compared to racing in higher humidity. You just don't, the heat is not as oppressive. There's no question. You feel it, it affects you, but the lack of oppressiveness is it's like it's very hard to describe. It's much easier to perform and to push yourself because it's not humid.
Absolutely. And then would you recommend trail shoes for this race?
I've done both. I do think that trail shoes definitely have a role. I think that they are. I've raced in my Hoka Speed Goats, which are like a performance trail shoe, and I've tried racing in my Nike 4%, what are they called? The whatever, the carbon plate shoes. I actually preferred running in my trail shoes because the trail shoes, I felt like I had a better grip. I felt like because a lot of the performance shoes, the speed shoes, they have no tread, and now a lot of these Boulder roads are very, very hard pack, and so it's not a big deal. So without tread, you're not really slipping at all. If you look at the pros, they're all racing in their high performance shoes. But if you're an age grouper, I think that a trail shoe is a very reasonable choice. Just make sure it's a light trail shoe. You don't want something heavy and clunky.
No. And then our last question is, can I ride my bike from transition area back to the parking lot after the race?
You absolutely can, but it is not easy. I have done that the last few years, and I was actually trying to remember how I did it. I was trying because I've done it the last 2 years. I've actually ridden my bike back, and I think what I did, I know what I did. You have to ride, you actually have to ride along this dirt road on your TT bike, and you've got all your bags and everything else. It's not easy, but you can do it.
Okay.
And you have to avoid like the highway. It's like it's not easy.
Not easy, but possible. All right. That is all the questions we have for you today. Thank you so much. And I think that's a wrap.
Thanks for being here, guys.